The fluorescent lights flickered above the quiet supermarket, casting long shadows over the empty aisles. It was well past midnight when Officer Ryan Cole and his 9 partner, Max, entered through the shattered front door. The alarm had gone off 20 minutes earlier, but something about this call felt different. Max's nose twitched, his tail stiffened. Then, without warning, he bolted straight toward aisle 9. Ryan sprinted after him, his flashlight slicing through the darkness. Max, what is it? Boy? Boo. The dog stopped dead in front of the cereal shelves, barking, whining, scratching at the tiles. The sound echoed through the store. And then Max refused to move. No command, no call could pull him away. Ryan's breath caught as Max began pawing at the baseboard behind a fallen cereal box. When Ryan knelt to look closer, he saw something that made his heart freeze. A small, trembling hand was reaching out from behind the wall. Ryan shouted for backup, pulling at the loose panel until it came free. Behind the shelf was a narrow space, a crawl area between storage walls. Inside, curled up, covered in dust and fear, was a little girl, maybe 6 years old. She didn't speak. Her eyes were wide and empty, her small fingers clutching a torn stuffed bear. "Hey, it's okay," Ryan said gently. "You're safe now." Max slowly approached, lying down beside her, tail wagging softly. The girl reached out, touching his fur. For the first time, she whispered a word. "A buddy." The store manager arrived, pale and shaking. That area's not even supposed to be accessible. "We didn't know anyone could hide back there." Paramedics checked the girl. She was dehydrated, scared, but alive. Still, no one knew who she was or how long she'd been there. Ryan stayed by her side as detectives searched the store. The camera showed something chilling. 2 nights before, a man had entered through the back door, leading the same little girl inside. But he never came out. The next day, Ryan and Max returned to the supermarket. Max sniffed around the back alley, nose pressed to the pavement. Suddenly, he stopped at a dumpster, barking furiously. Inside, police found a wallet and a blood-stained jacket. The man, later identified as Evan Ross, a suspect in multiple child abductions, was missing. Days turned into weeks. The girl, identified as Emily Carter, had been missing for almost a month. Her parents, broken with grief, rushed to the hospital when they got the call. When Emily saw her mother, she froze, then burst into tears, clinging to her like she'd never let go. But Emily refused to be separated from Max. Wherever the 9 went, she followed. The bond between them grew so strong that Ryan joked Max had adopted a human. One night, Ryan sat beside Max, watching Emily draw in her hospital room. "You saved her life, partner," he whispered. "Wait." Max wagged his tail but kept his eyes on Emily, like he knew his job wasn't finished yet. But the story wasn't over. A week later, police received a tip. Evan Ross had been hiding in an abandoned farmhouse 15 miles out of town. Ryan and Max joined the team sent to arrest him. As they approached the property, Max began to growl low in his throat. Inside, they found signs someone had been there, food wrappers, children's toys, and maps of nearby towns. Then, from the shadows, a gunshot rang out. Ryan ducked, heart pounding. Max darted ahead, ignoring his handler's command to stay back. There was a struggle, shouting, a flash of light, then silence. When Ryan reached him, Evan Ross was on the ground, his weapon kicked away, and Max stood over him, teeth bared, protecting his handler. The nightmare was finally over. Weeks later, the city honored Max for his bravery. Reporters filled the police station, and Emily, now smiling and healthy, placed a shiny medal around Max's neck herself. Ryan looked at her parents and said quietly, "If Max hadn't stopped in aisle 9 that night, we might never have found her." Emily hugged Max tightly. "He's my hero," she whispered. As the camera pans out, we see Ryan and Max walking through the supermarket one last time. The aisles are bright now, busy with life again. When they reach aisle 9, Max stops for a moment, his tail wagging, his eyes calm. Ryan smiles. "You remember, don't you?" he says softly. Max barks once, proud and strong. That night, behind the cereal boxes, a miracle had happened. A 9's instincts, a child's hope, and a hero's heart came together to remind the world. 12 years had passed since that night in aisle 9. The world had moved on, but for Emily Carter, that moment was the one that defined her life. Now 18, Emily stood at the edge of a crowded stage, clutching a small medal in her trembling hands. It was the same medal she had once placed around a hero's neck. The night her world changed forever. As the audience quieted, her voice broke the silence. "This is for the one who found me when no one else could." My best friend, Max. The crowd fell silent. A single tear slipped down her cheek. The story flashed back to her childhood. The night Max had found her hidden behind the cereal wall. She remembered the warmth of his fur, the safety in his eyes, and how that single moment of trust had saved her life. Officer Ryan and Max had become her heroes. For years, they visited her birthdays, helped her heal, and reminded her that courage could come from the unlikeliest of places. But time had passed, and life had taken them in different directions. Ryan had retired 2 years ago. Max, his loyal partner, was older now. Gray around the muzzle, slower to move, but his eyes still carried the same spark that had once pierced the darkness of aisle 9. One crisp autumn morning, Emily drove to the small town police department to visit Ryan and Max. When Ryan opened the door, his eyes widened. Emily, she smiled through tears. He had to see him. Max lay on a soft blanket near the fireplace. When Emily knelt down, he raised his head slowly. For a moment, he just stared. Then his tail wagged weakly, and he pressed his nose into her hand. Brrr. Hey, buddy, she whispered, voice shaking. You remember me, don't you? Ryan looked away, fighting tears. He never forgot. They spent hours talking about that night. The sirens, the fear, and the miracle that changed everything. Emily shared how she was now studying criminal psychology, inspired by the very people and the dog who saved her. But Ryan's eyes grew heavy with sadness. He's not doing too well, and the vet says it's time soon. The words hit her like thunder. A few weeks later, the police department held a retirement ceremony for Max, the town's most decorated 9. Officers, families, and even news cameras gathered to honor the old dog who had once saved a child from the darkness. Emily stood in the front row, holding a medal of her own design, engraved with the words, "For the one who never gave up." Ryan gave a short speech, his voice trembling. Max wasn't just my partner. He was my brother, my protector, and the heart of this department. When Emily stepped forward, the crowd went silent. She knelt before Max, tears glistening in her eyes. You found me when I was lost, she whispered. You showed me what love and courage mean. This world is safer because you were in it. Max looked up at her one last time, licking her hand as if to say, I'd do it all again. The room was silent until the sound of quiet sobs filled the air. Even the toughest officers turned away, wiping tears. A month later, Max passed away peacefully at home, with Ryan and Emily beside him. The department held a small memorial, placing his collar on a wooden plaque in the police hall. But that wasn't the end. A year later, Emily stood in front of a new class of young cadets, her uniform crisp, her eyes steady. She was now an officer, a 9 handler. Beside her sat a young German shepherd puppy with bright, eager eyes. She smiled down at him. His name's Hero, she said softly. Because once a hero found me. As the camera pans out, Emily walks down the same supermarket aisle where her life had changed. The lights are bright, the shelves full, and a faint reflection of Max seems to walk beside her. Her voice narrates. A courage doesn't always bark the loudest. Sometimes it waits in silence, ready to find the lost and bring them home. She looks into the camera, tears glistening but smiling. Because heroes never really leave us. They live on in the hearts they save.